Hello, my name is Pep Rosenfeld, and on behalf of Salesforce, I'd like to welcome you to this series of episodes to help you deal with leading through change. You know, the world is a very changing place right now, and if only the changes were as virtual as the beautiful wilderness behind me. You want to go into this cabin, don't you? You can't. It's virtual. But change is real. And whether or not your role is sales, marketing, service, IT, or commerce, you're probably wondering how to get through this the best. Well, Salesforce has put together this series of episodes with experts to help you do just that. And we begin with an interview with Thomas Stiegelmann. Now, Thomas is the head of e-commerce for Bugaboo Global. Bugaboo, you might know, has the mission of helping people move freely. It turns out this is not the month for free movement. But Thomas has plenty of wisdom of how to deal with this disruption. And he's going to be interviewed by Peter Coffey. Peter is the VP of Strategic Research here at Salesforce. And together they'll be talking about the big questions. Questions like, how do you make sure both employees and customers stay happy? How do you reach customers when you can't reach them physically? And of course, how do you make sure we emerge from this disruption even better positioned for success in the future than we were before? That's all going to happen now. You enjoy the episode, and I will disappear into the virtual wood.
Good day to you all. I'm Peter Coffey, Vice President for Strategic Research at Salesforce, coming to you from the West Coast of the United States, up in the northwest corner by the state of Washington, near Seattle. And I'm joined today by Thomas Stiegelmann, the Director of Global E-commerce and Integrations at Bugaboo. Thomas, thank you so much for being part of Leading Through Change. You're with us today in Amsterdam?
Actually, not Amsterdam. I'm today working from the beach. We rented a little beach house for this week because we wanted to recharge our batteries a little bit, as we're all adapting a little bit to the current situation.
Well, that couldn't possibly be a better setup for what we're here for today, which is to discuss this extraordinary situation. I'm not going to say unprecedented, which is a word that people use too much because, the human race has gone through pandemics before, but this is the first in a highly connected world, in an economy that has had so much dependence on global operations and global collaborations. And Thomas, I wonder if you can give us some of the big picture of the world as seen from Bugaboo, because you are in design in some places, manufacturing in other places, selling in others. Kind of give us what your world looks like in the normal situation, as we used to call it, and how the current situation is affecting all of those activities.
And I couldn't agree more with you. It's a fascinating moment in our history. For us as Bugaboo, we're a maker of premium strollers for parents. We produce and we design our products here in the Netherlands. We produce them in China and we sell them globally. We're a global brand, selling those strollers from Asia to Europe to the US. And of course, we have been heavily impacted, like so many other businesses. Just simple example is we are still in an industry that is very, very offline driven. Parents want to test the product before, they want to feel it, they want to take it literally for a test drive around the store. And all of those kind of consumer behaviors suddenly is not possible, of course, when all the strollers cannot be tested in the store anymore. We also have the issue, of course, that our production is in our own factory in China. Yet again, we have been heavily impacted early on by China's lockdown. And of course, we also see the shift now towards online, where with retail being closed down, we see suddenly this explosion of consumers coming to our website. It's a really, really interesting phase to be in.
Thomas, I'm trying to remember how long it's been since my wife and I had to purchase a stroller when our children were 20 years younger than they are now. And I'm thinking that if I remember correctly, as you say, handling the goods, getting a sense of, is this solidly built? Is it easy to fold and operate? That was very important. But I don't recall buying more than one. And there are so many businesses in which to be a premium provider, people may have had one experience with the bargain unit and discovered that it was not a true bargain, that you were getting what you pay for. To sell the premium product to people who may only buy one or at most two strollers in a lifetime, this is not a simple marketing challenge.
Absolutely. I mean, this is your observation is so true. When you're thinking about the consumer journey of buying a stroller,
Yes.
it's first of all, it's quite predictable because of course we know that it's going to take on average about 10 months between starting the process and ending the process. And we know somewhere in this period, the parents are going to make the decision for which brand, for which product, and for which channel they're going to purchase. But I also, what most people don't understand is that this is an extremely emotional period for a lot of parents. Until yesterday, most parents were deciding, should I have pasta or should I have pizza for dinner? And suddenly, once the news break, you're making decisions that, for them sound a bit like a life and death decision they need to take. Is that the right product for my baby? And what do I actually need to look out for? And it's very funny. It's when you talk to our store staff and they explain the journey that a parent goes through, they do tons of research because none of them have the experience. They don't know what makes the stroller good and what makes the stroller bad. And they need 2 to 3 months before they have actually decided this is the brand and this is the product and this is the channel I want to go for. And that journey is really fascinating because it goes from online to offline, from friends to online reviews to pictures they get. It's a very, very interesting, a very long journey that just touches so many different touch points a consumer can have.
So building the brand, building reputation, which is an area where so many companies are now going to have to strengthen their capability. If there is less opportunity to handle the goods before purchase, then the need to be curating reputation through reviews, through customer and brand ambassadors and so on. This is an area where your role at Bugaboo is going to be more critical than ever.
I see this already happening. So when we look at our statistics, we already see that our traffic is exploding online because all of the consumers are indeed coming out to our website to do their research. And that also means that the role of .com is changing. It's not only a sales channel, it is also a channel to educate the consumer, to inspire the consumer, something that has been happening a lot of more offline in the past. But in this new environment, we obviously also need to adopt. We recently upgraded one of our key products. We brought out a new version, and we anyway plan to really enhance the online experience. But with COVID-19 being so around us, we really wanted to make sure that the online presentation of that product is even stronger. We wanted to make sure that it almost feels like you can touch the product, that you see all the engineering that went into the product. And this is something that I think as brands, as companies, really need to think about in the future with social distancing being around us for a longer period. What are the kind of interactions that are not happening offline anymore, but now are happening online? And how can we try to reproduce this a little bit?
Thomas, you are in such an interesting situation because I think most of us would agree that most of the world feels that it's perhaps to maybe as many as 3 months in to this concern about the crisis stage of the present pandemic. But of course, the decisions that lead someone to become your customer were made more like 9 or 10 or 11 months ago. If the child was on the way for some 6 months when this all began, it is not as if that could have been put on any kind of scheduled hiatus. And so your business, the arrival rate of new customers, as it were, for you, is not showing the kind of precipitous decline that, say, restaurant customers or automobile customers might be seeing. And so you are in a situation where, while the rest of the world can say, well, let's hit the pause button here for a moment, you really don't have that option at all. You have to be doing business based on decisions made, 6 months before anyone had heard the term COVID-19.
Exactly, and there are certain aspects to this story. First of all, we did notice initially that consumers were delaying their purchase. I'm calling it the great toilet paper wars of spring 2020. During this period, of course, the consumers they had different concerns than buying a stroller because the journey is so long. you can afford a delay of 2-3 weeks in your purchase the decision. You don't, unless you have really delayed it to the last minute, you can wait a little bit longer. And we did notice that in our numbers as well. There was a massive dip in terms of traffic to the website, but we saw then after 3 weeks, things started to normalize again. And you're absolutely right that we are benefiting, that we are in an industry where consumers will still buy strollers because babies are still on their way. And that is obviously a process that suddenly cannot be stopped. But we are also asking us whether there's obviously changes in the consumer behavior. Will people now, will they still buy the premium stroller, or will they move into a cheaper stroller because of the economy changing, whether you are employed? Again, so far, we haven't seen that change happening. If all, it is more increasing for us.
Well, this brings up 2 points then. One is that among the conversations we're having with customers is that their approach to forecasting of demand in the past might have been based on, this is last year and this is the percentage growth we expect. And you could do, as it were, an extrapolation approach. In the present situation, an analytic approach of looking at data in a situation that is not familiar becomes more important. And would you say that you're seeing any kind of shift from traditional forecasting methods to something that's much more, data-driven, much more measurement-based?
I would argue, again, we are in an interesting industry because our forecast is pretty predictable.
There is that. There is that, isn't there? Yes.
and we have been around for 20 years, so we are actually having tons of historic data. So we do have a very good understanding of what's coming in our direction. What is for us more the challenging piece is how is now the shift between the different channels. How do you know, hey, is by how much is retail going to drop, by how much is wholesale is going to drop, and what will be taking on by e-commerce? Is that happening at all? Those are the kind of big questions. And what is more interesting, yes, indeed, there's a data side to it, but there's also just a day-to-day decision cycle, because we don't know exactly what the politicians' decisions tomorrow are going to be. I'm reading every day the news of all the different countries in Europe to understand which country is going to open the doors, which country is going to close the doors, how much longer are we going to be this in the position. And that is right now driving my forecasting. And I think similar to many companies, for us, it's also difficult to really understand what's going to happen. There's so many variables that are driving right now the decision-making of consumers, from stores to are there any bad news? Is there going to be a second wave? Which we are also taking a very conservative approach, very short-term forecasting, and hoping that in the long term things will normalize.
Well, given, as we say, the inconvenient refusal of your customers to slow down and wait to show up, this means that you do not have the opportunity to slow down your operations. You're having to keep your people fully engaged. As you've said, you're doing product upgrades and new product introductions. The pace of business after a momentary hiccup of a few weeks duration is right back in there. How are you managing your workforce in this exceptional situation?
This is where I'm very lucky to be located in the Netherlands. Compared to a lot of other countries in Europe, the Netherlands, the government decided to support companies by paying part of our income, but forcing companies that the employees stay employed. So everybody at the HQ here in Amsterdam continues to work, whether there's actually right now demand for your job or not, which has opened a lot of interesting opportunities. So we have a few designers that have been doing live stream on Instagram. We have been doing video interviews with some of our retailers where a designer would explain to one of our partners and on the wholesale side how they designed a certain product. So it enables us to do things slightly different. From a digital perspective, we are all working 100%, say 120%, because there's so much more work for us to do. And it is an interesting experience. I mean, I love managing my team, and I'm used to be on the ground speaking to my team members on a day-by-day basis. And suddenly, since we're all working remotely, obviously, I feel that I miss a little bit this day-to-day engagement with the team. And we are trying to compensate. We're having coffee breaks throughout the day where we just have a little bit of a chit chat. Everybody grabs a coffee. One of my team members, she's organizing fun little events every Friday night where we grab a beer or wine and we do a pub quiz and this kind of stuff. And I need to say, in the very end, I feel that as a team, we're actually much closer now than we have been when we were in the office, because you see the dogs, you see the homes of people, you see the kids of people. I'm actually really enjoying this.
Yeah, this is a remarkable thing. In fact, you mentioned that you're arranging to visit each other's homes to do home tours, as it were, and the opportunity to have a kind of interaction that was not really feasible when everyone was commuting to a center city and then all going back out in different directions. And now there can be much more of a sense of community and engagement if it's cultivated. It doesn't just happen.
Exactly, and I mean, I'm really making time available for my team to use this time, because I know how difficult it is for everybody. You're sitting at home, there's nobody around, you have kids running around, kids that cannot go to school. I mean, it's tough for everybody. And I think, as a manager, it is also your job to to make a little bit of time and room available for the situation, to do things slightly different. And I think, if you really take care of your people and you make room for this kind of things, everybody is going to be grateful and is going to enjoy this period, and it's going to give everybody a little bit of energy back as well.
Thomas, among the questions that's somewhat useful to ask are, if you had known 3 months ago that this was going to happen, do you feel that there are preparations you would have made in terms of technology, in terms of having playbooks already defined? Are there things that you will remember so that after we get through the present crisis, you can start to think about, okay, what does our playbook look like for the next pandemic? Because this is not the last time probably in our lifetimes that something like this may happen.
It has been a super interesting experience for me, because I tend, as a German, I like to prepare for stuff, and I do have my playbooks for all kind of things. But it was in January, I feel that we were still so distracted by what was happening to our supply chain that it didn't cross my mind what would happen to Europe once the virus would arrive in Europe, because we were still having discussions about, are we going to have enough stock? How can we get more stock over to Europe? Because because again, our factory being in China, we already felt, hey, there's something happening.
You were understandably focused on China for January because that was where the problem was, as opposed to the potential problem 2 months later.
Exactly. And I did not thought about, hey, could the same thing happening in Europe, and to what extent it could happen in Europe? And I remember speaking to my boss, and I was like, how do we not see this happening that clearly? Because we had the playbook from China in front of us. I mean, when you talk to our colleagues in operations, what they did to keep our factory open, from taking the temperature from everybody in there, making sure social distances, what was happening, meetings in the same factory were happening via video call from different rooms. I mean, we have done all the homework in China to make sure that we would keep on running our business. Yet again, I failed to anticipate the same thing for Europe. And now looking back, it's obviously easy to highlight, I should have had more stock in there. We should have acted early on it. But I need to really give credit to Bugaboo, to my colleagues. We adopted pretty quickly. I mean, once the news started to break, and again, we were quite lucky that it started in Italy, which is not a key market for us. But as soon as it started in Italy, we started to have those discussions. Let's have a status page on the website where we inform the consumer about how COVID-19 is impacting us, that customer service is still up and running, that fulfillment is still up and running, the warehouses are still up and running. Let's change everything over to free shipping. With consumers not being able to go to the store anymore, we changed immediately everything to free shipping so that consumers would still be able to get the product, although they without needing to pay for it. We started actively talking with our colleagues from wholesale and retail to make sure that we are trading stock efficiently. So we were pretty fast on reacting to it. Of course, I wish we would have just had maybe 4 weeks earlier head start into all of that to just go a little bit smoother through the transition from offline to online.
Well, this is something that that Bill Gates said that I thought he put it very well, that if the doubling time is 1.5 weeks, if you lose 5 weeks, the problem is 8 times as big. And so, yeah,
Exactly.
losing a month was not insignificant. I mean, the problem could grow by almost an order of magnitude during a month right now, and that is not a behavior that most people's brains can really wrap around very well. Most of us are consistently caught off guard by what exponential actually means, and when it's not just being used as a hand wavy term for very fast, when it really is an exponential curve.
Exactly, and I think there's, it's funny. In university I was actually asked to give a presentation on exponential growth, and I used this famous metaphor of the chessboard, and you're doubling the rice pawn with every field. And I mean, it's once you tell somebody the story, everybody understands the problem. I think with COVID-19 there were so many news happening because we are in such a connected world that was very different to actually differentiate between the real news that were happening, the information that were relevant versus all the noise around it. And there was so many information being shared, and people didn't realize that countries were in a different state. Of course, if you're 4 weeks behind Italy, things look pretty normal for you because you don't understand 4 weeks in exponential growth is a long time. And that, I think that was something that a lot of people were really struggling with understanding. Okay, there's different countries, there are different stages, there's different growth rates, and to compute all of this you really needed to be in a lot of detail to really make sure that you were making the right conclusions based on the data.
Thomas, what I'm hearing from you is that there was quick action in dealing with the problem that was visible on the supply chain side in China, that this did not leave a lot of brain cycles available for thinking about the implications for your local design and sales operations, but that once that became apparent, you guys showed some pretty impressive agility here in pivoting quickly to things like free shipping, recognizing more of an online engagement model for your customers, and that's fantastic. You've got the workforce not merely dispersed, but you're maintaining engagement with your workforce with things like you've talked about of creating new kinds of social interaction among your teams, that they stay with each other even though they are physically spread. Now let me ask, if you were to see in your inbox this morning an email from Thomas Stegelman dated in 2025, what would you expect your future self to be telling you about how things are different 5 years from now? My friend Joe McKendrick over at ZDNet said, just understand 2025 got here 60 months early. And the accelerations of changes that perhaps are apparent now, but what do you imagine your future self saying to you about, hey, wow, this is how things changed in ways that lasted a long time after we had a vaccine?
I was talking last week with a colleague of mine about this, because I was like, for the first time now, I'm feeling that we start to think a little bit more long term. If I think about 4 weeks ago, we were thinking on a day-by-day basis, what's happening today? And I would argue for maybe last week, we started to think about, okay, what's going to happen in fall? What's going to happen in January of next year? And now, your question obviously, okay, what's going to happen, over the next 5 years? And I wish I would know 100% for certain, which unfortunately I don't know. But I mean, we can expect that this virus, COVID-19, is going to stay around for a longer period. Because if we are looking at the numbers, Germany has roughly 160,000 people that got infected by now. They think there might be up to 10 times as many actual infections, actually. So maybe it's 1.6 million, but we have over 80 million people living in Germany. So there's still we still need to think about that we require a vaccination at some point. So we know that this situation is going to stick around for maybe a year, maybe for 2 years, where we'll go through certain waves. So absolutely, we're going to see massive changes to various industries. This is not going to be only our stroller industry. We're going to see that restaurants will need to operate differently. retail, shopping malls, service, all of those industries will need to adopt to this new situation. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how companies are reacting to it. And I was speaking last week to a few colleagues of mine, where I was saying, again, this is not the first time this is happening. I mean, we all remember the oil crisis, which forced companies to adopt massively to the new reality, and we're going to see that happening as well. Things will go back to normal. It is going to be a different normal, a normal that we all get used to. But people still want to go out to restaurants and have a good dinner. And those restaurants will operate differently, and they will need to reinvent a little bit what they do. People still want to go out and do some shopping, but it will be different. And it's up to us, obviously, to define a little bit how different this is going to be and how we can make that work. And there will be still periods.
People also want to be sure that they can feel that they've done the best they could for their children and given their children, what they never had. And as long as there are people who want to do that, there's going to be a business or bugaboo.
Exactly. And there will be business for all of us.
Thomas, I wish we had more time. It was so great to have you with us to kick off this series of conversations. The opportunity to talk with you about everything from supply chain to operations and team engagement, and to think a little bit about a persistent change in what we call normal economic behavior has been wonderful. And that we could get this all done in 30 minutes is amazing. But that's the pace of the COVID period, isn't
Indeed.
it? Thomas, thank you for joining us with Salesforce and leading through change.
Thank you very much, Peter. Talk to you soon.